Welcome back to the Carnival of Flowers tutorials. I'm Natasha from Buttonnose Crochet, and in this series of tutorials we will be making the Carnival of Flowers blanket. It is quite a technical pattern, but it's a great way for you to learn new stitches. In this part 3, we will be making the cluster flowers in the circle. And at the end of this, you have the option of making this section as a mandala, so you'll be able to stop and hang it up on in a hoop up on your wall. But also too, in this section we have some decrease stitches and some front post decrease stitches. So we'll go through that, and I'll step you through how to do those, and we'll get started. Okay, to start this part of the pattern, I'm continuing on to use Eelde, which was the colour here. So what I'm going to do is chain 1 and back post half double crochet around the first stitch. If you're changing colours, make a standing back post half double crochet around the first stitch. Next, back post half double crochet around the next 10 stitches. And then we'll be placing a stitch marker. In this round you will need to have 12 stitch markers, and they will help you mark where you need to do your flower stems, so your trebles for the next round. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So we need to put a stitch marker in that stitch. Now, to make sure that your stitch markers are in the right place, they need to be in line with the center puff flower. That is how we're going to be lining up our flower stems, our flowers to our puff flowers. So continue doing the back post half double crochet around and place a stitch marker every 15 stitches. So I'll meet you back around at the start of the round, and we'll go on to round 20. Okay, so I'm at the end of the round, and after I stopped the video before, I noticed that my stitch markers were one off, so just double check your stitch markers before you finish the round, because with one off the stems would have been sort of like in line with the side of the puff stitch. So to finish this round, I just finish it with back post half double crochet and then slip stitch to the first stitch. I always like to chain 1 when I secure my yarn. It just saves it coming apart later. So that is round 19, and just to recap, this is a very important round in the sense that just make sure that your stitch markers are exactly in line with your puff stitches before you continue on. Now, note with people that aren't changing colours, as you can see, the end of the round is between stitch markers. So this next round we will be slip stitching into the third loop of the back post half double crochets. So if you can see, we've got our top 2 loops here, but in the back we got a 3rd loop. That is the loop that we're going to be slip stitching into in this next round. That's how we are going to make it look like that our flowers are floating, so to speak, on the blanket. So yeah, so let's start round 20. Okay, so for round 20 I am using the teal colour Bastongne of Scheepjes Colour Crafter. And to start this round, I use a standing stitch, so slip knot on the hook. Now we're going to start in a stitch with the stitch marker. If you're using only one colour, slip stitch until 4 stitches before the stitch marker in the 3rd loop. Okay, so what we're going to do is make a standing treble in the stitch that had the stitch marker. Get my yarn right. Okay. So that's a standing treble. Then what we want to do is chain 2, treble into the same stitch, and what we want to do is repeat that chain 2 treble. We've got to do it 4 times, so another 3 times. And then chain 1. So we'll have 5 trebles in the group. And then what we want to do is skip 4 stitches. And then in the 5th stitch, we're going to slip stitch into the 3rd loop. So this is that 3rd loop I was talking about. Don't make it too tight. So whatever you do, when you do your slip stitches in the 3rd loop, don't make them too tight. And we want to slip stitch into 6 of these 3rd loops. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We should have 4 stitches before the stitch marker. Chain 1, skip 4 stitches, treble, chain 2. So we do our treble group again. So treble in the next stitch, chain 2 and treble, and do that 4 times. So we have 5 trebles and 4 chain 2 spaces. So do that. Chain 1, skip 4 stitches, slip stitch into the 3rd loop for the next 6 stitches. Now this is going to be our repeat. So we treble, chain 2 treble, another 4 times into the same stitch, chain 1, skip 4 stitches, slip stitch into the next 6 stitches, chain 1, skip 4 stitches. That will be our repeat for this round. So I'll meet you back at the start of the round where we've done our 6 slip stitches to finish. Okay, so I'm at the end of round 20 and I've done my 6 slip stitches. So we just want to slip stitch to the starting treble in the fan group and then fasten off if you're changing colours. So you should have 12 groups of 5 treble and 4 chain 2 spaces, and then you have a chain 1 either side and 12 lots of 6 slip stitches. And as you can see, we're making sure that my stitch markers are in the right spot. My treble groups are in line with my puff stitch. So let's move on to round 21. Okay, for round 20 we're going to be making our cluster flowers, and I am using Coevorden mustard for these cluster flowers. So to start this round, if you're not changing colours, just slip stitch to the chain 2 space. If you are changing colours, make a standing treble cluster. So I'll show you how to do it. So yarn over twice, insert the hook, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over twice, repeat that again. So you'll have 3 loops on the hook. So you basically got 2 incomplete trebles on your hook, and pull through, and that is your first cluster. And what we want to do is chain 2, treble cluster into the same stitch, so a treble cluster is basically treble 2 together in the same stitch. Then chain 2, and we want to make a treble cluster, chain 2, treble cluster, into the same space, and then chain 2, and we repeat that until we've now this round will ruffle a bit, and that's because we're adding so many more stitches to this round than what we have had in the previous round. But that will be sorted in the following couple of rounds after this round, so do not worry. So repeat that in each chain space. So you'll have 4 lots of 2 treble cluster chain 2. So you'll have 4 lots that should look like that. So treble cluster chain 2 twice in the same chain space, and repeat that another 3 times. Next, what we want to do is chain 2, and then we're going to skip the chain 1 space and slip stitch into the 3rd and 4th slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. So if you don't want to slip stitch into the previous slip stitch, I usually find going through the center of it works. That's why we don't want to make our slip stitches too tight, because sometimes we've got to work back into them. Next, chain 2, and we do treble cluster chain 2 twice in the next chain space, and then we repeat that another 3 times. This round does use quite a bit of yarn, but I just love how the cluster flowers they just stand out within the pattern. So this round's quite relatively easy. Oops. And it's just a matter of keeping count of what you're doing in each chain space. So once I finish this group, I'll go through the repeat for the round. So for the repeat of the round, it's treble cluster chain 2 twice in the next chain space, repeat that another 3 times, so you'll finish with a chain 2, slip stitch into the 3rd and 4th slip stitch of the previous round, chain 2, and that is your repeat. So at the end of your cluster round, you'll always finish with a chain 2 before the slip stitch, and then you start with a chain 2 as well. And you just repeat that around, and I will meet you back around at the start where we'll be slip stitching into our slip stitches. Okay, so I'm at the end of round 21 and I've done my 2 slip stitch. So what we want to do is chain 2 and slip stitch to the first treble cluster. And that is the end of round 21. Now if you're changing colours fast enough, if you want you can sew in your ends, but I usually do that at the end of a part. So that is what your round 21 should look like. You will have 12 groups of 8 clusters with 2 clusters in each chain 2 space, and you'll have in between the clusters you'll have 2 chain 2 spaces and 2 slip stitch. So let's go on to round 22. Now this round we will be doing some treble 3 togethers, so treble decreases in the middle here. They'll be worked in front of this chain 2 and slip stitch section. So we'll just get our next colour. So round 22. For this round I'm using Eelde. So to start this round we need to do a front post double crochet around the first treble cluster, and then 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space, and then we want to repeat front post double crochet in around the cluster, 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space to the last chain space, So just repeat that and I'll meet you at the end of this cluster group. Okay, so I've just done 2 double crochet in the last chain 2 space before the last cluster. Front post double crochet around the last cluster. Then what we want to do is do a treble 3 together into round 19. So to do that, we need to skip 4 stitches in round 19. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Fold your work back, so that way you can work into these stitches. So treble 3 together. So it should look like that on your hook. Yarn over, pull through, and we'll repeat that again over into the next 3 stitches. So we've got 2 treble 3 togethers between our cluster groups. Then what we want to do is do a front post double crochet around the first cluster. But before we go any further, when we do our treble 3 togethers, we are always skipping the chain 2 space after a cluster and before a cluster. We do not work into those. So we repeat front post double crochet, 2 double crochet, all the way to the end of the cluster, finish with a front post double crochet. So our repeat for this round is front post double crochet, 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space, repeat that to the last chain 2 space before the last cluster, front post double crochet around the last, treble 3 together into round 19 twice, and we repeat that around to finish off with a 2 front post treble 3 2 treble 3 togethers between the last two clusters. So I'll meet you back around at the start of the round. Okay, so I've finished round 22, finished with 2 treble 3 togethers into round 19. So what we want to do is slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, the front post double crochet, and fasten off. Oh, sorry, we don't fasten off. So that's round 23. So sorry, that was round 22. So round 23, with the same colour, we want to chain 1 and double crochet into the next stitch. That gives us our first double crochet 2 together. Next we want to half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then single crochet into the next 14 stitches. Now if you're making the blanket, place a stitch mark in the first single crochet. This will be the start of your next round. So single crochet in the next 14. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's your 14 single crochet. You want to half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and a double crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches. So that's our arch complete. So we've got a double crochet 2 together, 2 half double crochet, 14 single crochet, 2 half double crochet and a double crochet 2 together. And then what we want to do is do a front post treble 2 together. So yarn over twice, go around the first treble 3 together, pull up a loop, through 2, through 2, yarn over twice, go around the next treble 3 together, pull through 2, pull through 2, we've got 3 loops on the hook, pull through, and that's our front post treble 2 together. So our repeat for this round is double crochet 2 together, 2 half double crochet, 14 single crochet, 2 half double crochet, double crochet 2 together, and then a front post treble 2 together. So repeat that around. You'll finish with a front post treble 2 together around your last 2 treble 3 togethers, and then slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet, because that's your double crochet 2 together. So pause the video and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Okay, so I'm back at the start of the round and I have finished with a front post treble 2 together. So just slip stitch into that first double crochet 2 together and fasten off. And that is the end of round 23. Now if you're doing the blanket, this is where you stop. But if you're doing the mandala, we'll go on to the mandala row 24, so the border, and I'll show you how to do it, but I won't complete it just because I'm doing the blanket. Okay, so we'll go on to round 24 for the mandala only. So for round 24, the border for the mandala, I've chosen the pink for the border just to show you the stitches. If you've changed colour, you do a standing back post single crochet around the first double crochet 2 together, and then back post single crochet around the next 9 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then what we want to do is do a picot 4. So we want to chain 4, and this is how I do my picots. Instead of slip stitching into the first chain that we made, I slip stitch into the loops of the actual stitch, just so that way it's a little bit more secure, I find. And also too, when you attach, if you want to attach it to a ring, it's a lot easier to work into. Just find the center, there we go. So when you're attaching the ring, you just do a single crochet into the picot, and that will attach it to the ring. And then you want to back post single crochet around the next 10 stitches. to the bottom here. So your last back post single crochet is around the double crochet 2 together. And then you want to do a front post single crochet around the front post treble 2 together. So you just repeat that. Back post single crochet 10 stitches, a picot 4, back post single crochet 10 stitches, and then a front post single crochet around the front post treble 2 together, and that would be your border. So you'll be able to attach it to a ring, or if you've used thread, you'll be able to block it and make it as a doily maybe. But that is the edging for the mandala size only. Thank you for watching, and in the next video we will be doing the roses that sit in between the cluster groups and the full rose, yeah, the last lot of roses before the corners. So I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.